UFOs over the battlefields of Normandy. An unseen force. Have you ever heard of a war where the enemy wasn't even human? Where soldiers fought through smoke, screams, and bullets, only to stop in their tracks because something was watching them. Something they couldn't see. Something the June 6th, 1944. The beaches were soaked in chaos, screams, gunfire, bodies. But amidst the violence, something else arrived. Not with tanks, not with flags, but with light. Private Theo Renner, 22, was one of the first to land at Omaha Beach. He didn't speak much after the war. But on one occasion, just one, he told his grandson something strange, something that didn't fit into textbooks or documentaries. There was a light in the sky, he said. It didn't move like a plane. Didn't sound like one either. It hovered, watching. Then it blinked. Gone. No one believed him. But what if he wasn't the only one? What if Normandy wasn't just the site of the greatest amphibious invasion in history, but something more? Something no one was prepared to face. Reports from that day, scattered, buried, forgotten, mention lights in the sky, glowing orbs, metallic discs, things that defied physics, no sound, no smoke, just presence. At 3:42 a.m., long before the first boots touched sand, radar operators aboard a British destroyer noted a metallic anomaly hovering above the waves. At first, they thought it was German tech, some experimental aircraft. But when they tried to track it, it vanished. Not flew. Vanished. At the same time, across the channel, in a darkened control room, American Lieutenant James Hart scribbled a note in his logbook. Lights, not flares, silent, stationary, witnessed by 3 others, disappeared in blink. The log was never followed up. Until now. And then there's the French villager, Madame Eloise Barrault. She lived just outside Sainte-Mère-Église, a small town parachuted into chaos on the first night of invasion. She was 11 years old then, and she swore, until the day she died, that she saw a floating silver bell above the trees, glowing bright white without sound, while the soldiers fell from the sky. She said it watched the soldiers, and then, just like that, it faded into mist. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Now skeptics dismiss these tales. Fog of war, trauma, misidentification. But something doesn't sit right. Too many reports, too many coincidences. So I ask you, what was really flying above the beaches that night? And why? Didn't we know? This story may sound impossible, but I promise, by the end, you'll start questioning everything you thought you knew about World War II. Because the real war may have involved more than just humans. Let's go deeper. There's a classified field report, long buried in the archives, U.S. intelligence, dated June 8, 1944. It refers to bright objects moving against wind currents above the Cotentin Peninsula, observed by a squad of engineers who were repairing damaged communication lines. They weren't soldiers. They weren't under fire. They were calm, objective, and they all saw the same thing. One of them, Sergeant Roy Tillman, filed a personal note alongside the official document. We were sure it was a new kind of German craft, but the way it moved, it didn't make sense. It didn't fight. It just watched. Then, it vanished. Some say it's nothing. Weather balloons, atmospheric tricks. But ask yourself, how many weather balloons appear without a sound, hover against the wind, evaporate into thin air? How many make battle-hardened soldiers stop and stare in terror? One unnamed soldier, codename Jack Rabbit, recorded an audio log that was only declassified in 1997. His voice trembles. We saw something above the ridge, shaped like a saucer, chrome-like. It hummed, low like it was vibrating our bones. Then it zipped left, then right, then up. It moved like a dream. His unit never made it back. No explanation. No bodies. Just gone. Some believe the Nazis were experimenting with advanced propulsion systems. Die Glock, they called it. The Bell, supposedly capable of flight and teleportation. But others believe what they found was not of this world. Think about it. Why would so many different men, different ranks, different backgrounds, report seeing the same thing? Why would some of those reports be scrubbed from the record? What was the military trying to hide? You're probably thinking, maybe it's just wartime hallucinations. Maybe it's just stories. But let me ask you this. How do you explain the photo? Yes, there's a photo. Taken by a medic from the 29th Infantry during the landing on Omaha Beach. In the background, beyond the chaos, a silver shape hangs in the sky, blurred but distinct. It's not a plane, it's not a bird, and it doesn't belong. The photo was classified for over 50 years. Today, it lives in a private collection. Hidden, but not forgotten. So, what really happened over Normandy? Were we watched? Monitored? Were we protected? Or was it something else entirely? Something we weren't meant to see? In the next part, we'll follow a squad, codename Raven 6, who witnessed something so strange during the siege of Carrington, it left half of them questioning reality. But before we go, tell me, do you believe it's possible? That something else was out there, watching our greatest war unfold? Let me know in the comments. And if this story shocked you, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find the truth we're about to uncover. Because trust me, it only gets stranger from here. It began with a flicker, not a light, not exactly, but something behind the eyes, a shift, a presence. Like someone else had entered the room, only there was no one there. June 10th, 1944. Carrington. 4 days after D-Day. A squad of 7 men, call sign Raven 6, was tasked with pushing through a dense hedgerow corridor just outside of town. Their objective, secure an old farmhouse believed to be a German observation post. But when they got there, no Germans, no resistance, just silence. Too silent. Staff Sergeant Oliver Reed was the first to notice it. The radio static. It didn't hum. It didn't crackle. It whispered. Tiny, barely there murmurs. At first, they thought it was interference. The radios were known to glitch, especially with shrapnel and the chaos of war. But then, the whispers began to form shapes. Words, not English, not German, not any language Reed or anyone else in the squad could recognize. Private Mathis dropped his receiver, his face pale, eyes wide. "Something's wrong with this place," he muttered. "It's not just quiet, it's listening." Reed laughed, told him to focus, but inside, he felt it too, that sinking feeling, like they were being watched. As they approached the farmhouse, a strange glow shimmered on the second-floor window. At first, they thought it was moonlight, but it pulsed, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The youngest of the group, Private Levin, raised his rifle. "Did you see that?" he whispered. The light blinked once, then vanished. They entered the house. Room by room they swept through, empty. But that's when things started to break. The air shifted, thicker, denser, like wading through fog, though nothing was visible. Their compasses spun uncontrollably. Watches stopped. Corporal Davis reached for his field map. But the ink was gone. Not smeared, not faded. Gone, as if it had never been printed. And then came the sound. Low, metallic, like metal tearing inside the earth. Levin dropped to his knees, covered his ears, screamed. No one else heard it. But he swore. It felt like it was inside his skull. They tried to call for backup. Nothing. Radio's dead. Reed ordered the squad to retreat to the nearby tree line. But just as they turned, something moved. Fast, silver, like liquid mercury darting across the field and vanishing into the woods. No footsteps, no sound. Gone. The squad froze. No one spoke. No one even breathed. "Did you see that?" whispered Davis. Everyone nodded. No one wanted to admit it. No one wanted to say the word, but they all thought it. UFO. They stayed hidden in the trees for an hour, maybe more, hoping it was just stress, a shared hallucination. But when they returned to the farmhouse, something had changed. Symbols, etched into the walls, glowing faintly. None of them recognized the language. Not German, not Allied, not human. Levin took a photo, one of the last he'd ever take. The next day, he was gone. Just vanished. No body, no blood, no signs of struggle. They never found him. The squad was pulled back 2 days later. Official report claimed enemy engagement, one missing in action. But Reed didn't believe it. He never did. Years later, Reed would share his story in a letter to a fellow veteran. That letter was never published. But it was discovered, buried in a footlocker, by his grandson. In it, he wrote, "We weren't alone out there. And I don't mean the Germans. We were being watched, studied, like rats in a cage. And it didn't end there. Nearby units reported strange compass failures, lights in the sky, static whispers in the radio. Some brushed it off. Others never returned. And then there was the farmer, a man named Jules Breton. He lived half a mile from the site. An old man now, but back then he was just a boy. He remembers the sky lighting up that night. Not with bombs, not with fire, with color, green, blue, silver. He described it like a curtain of light descending from the heavens. And in the center, a shape, not a plane, not a balloon. He called it le silence volant, the silent flyer. His mother made him swear never to speak of it again. But he never forgot. Because the cows stopped producing milk, the birds stopped singing, and the dog, well, it was never the same. It just sat for days, staring at the farmhouse, waiting. And then came the rain, black, not mud, not oil, rain, thick, heavy, smelled like metal. It only lasted 15 minutes, but every plant it touched withered, and no one talks about it. Not in the history books, not in the records, but the land remembers. Even now, 80 years later, the grass grows differently there. Patchy, yellowed, as if the ground itself was scorched by something unnatural. So what was it? Some experimental tech? A weather anomaly? Or something else entirely? A presence? A watcher? Something that wasn't meant to be seen, but was. Let me ask you this. If 7 trained soldiers, all grounded in reality, see the same thing, if the earth itself shows scars that no fire caused, if the radio's whispered languages no human spoke, can it still be dismissed? Or are we lying to ourselves? In Part 3, we meet the only surviving member of Raven 6, now 97 years old. He never talked, never told anyone. Until one night, he finally did. And what he revealed changes everything. But before we dive into that, what do you think the light was? A weapon? A warning? Or a watcher? Let us know below. And if this part left you with chills, leave a like, because this mystery is just beginning to unravel, and what comes next will shake you to the core. His name was Corporal Ewan Fletcher. Serial number 21,034,817. Age, when deployed, 24. Age today, 97. For decades he stayed silent. No memoirs, no interviews, not a single word about what happened near Carrington until last year. His great-granddaughter Sophie was recording him for a school history project, asking about the war, just the usual. Then she asked, "Did anything strange ever happen to you?" The camera rolled. Ewan paused, his eyes glazed over. Not confused, but remembering, like he was still there. And then, he whispered, "The light, it spoke to me." Silence. Sophie laughed nervously, thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He stared past the lens, voice low, gravelly. "It didn't have a mouth, but I heard it, inside my head, not like a voice, more like a feeling, like knowing something before it's said, like remembering something you never learned." Sophie showed the video to her father. He thought it was nonsense. War trauma. Senility. But Sophie kept digging. And that's how we found the tape. And the truth. Let's rewind. June 12th, 1944. 2 days after Raven 6's mission went dark. Ewan Fletcher was one of the soldiers sent in to retrieve them. They found only 4 men. Shaking. Barely able to speak. And one of them was drawing on the dirt with a stick, a circle, a triangle inside, then another circle. The others said nothing, just kept staring at the sky. Fletcher was young then. Brave, reckless. He didn't believe in ghost stories. But when he walked into that farmhouse, he stopped believing in reason, too. The walls were scorched, like lightning had kissed them. The air electric, sharp, like breathing in ozone. He found a journal. Mathis's. Most of the pages were torn out. Except one. It read, "Something came last night. Not German, not ours. I think it chose one of us. I think it knows we're watching." That night, Fletcher stood guard by the window. The others slept, or tried to. At 2:37 a.m., something buzzed. Not a machine, not an engine, more like a hum inside the bones, deep, vibrating, and outside, the sky was pulsing, colors, shifting, fluid, not auroras, not fire, something alive. Then came the shape, above the treetops, a disk, smooth, silent, floating, but what broke him wasn't what he saw, it was what he felt. "I felt it looking at me," he whispered, "not just at my face, at my thoughts, at my memories, like it was peeling through my mind, curious. Cold." He said it blinked, not literally, not eyes, but a flash, a pulse of light, and he wasn't in the farmhouse anymore, not in a dream, not unconscious, but somewhere else. He described it like floating inside a thought. No walls, no sky, just endless gray. Shapes moved past him, tall, thin, faceless, and yet familiar. They looked like memories I forgot. But they weren't mine then, he saw it. A battlefield, but not Normandy, not Earth. Soldiers marched, tall, silent, wearing armor that shimmered like oil in water, and overhead, hundreds of ships, disks, triangles, shapes with no names, hovering, watching. It wasn't a vision, he said. It was a warning. A blink later, he was back. Same spot, same window. The others still asleep. Except now the clock read 3:42 a.m., and his boots were wet, not mud, dew, but it hadn't rained, and the room smelled of something he never forgot. Metal, burned stone, and cinnamon. Yes, cinnamon. No one believed him, so he never told the story again. Until Sophie. And even then, only once. After she stopped recording, he looked at her and said, "Don't go looking for them. They'll find you when they're ready." He died 3 weeks later. Peacefully. But Sophie swears. The night before he passed, she heard something. A hum. Outside her window. Software rhythmic. And a single flash of light. She thought it was a dream. Until she found the symbol, drawn on her bedroom window. Circle, triangle, circle, Fletcher's symbol. The one Mathis scratched in the dirt. And the one we've found again and again on walls, in fields, etched faintly in old helmets recovered from Normandy. So the question becomes, what were they trying to say? Why show a vision of war on another world? Were they warning us? Comparing? Or preparing? Fletcher believed the war was never just ours, that something or someone was watching, studying us, testing. But for what? And what happened to the others? The missing question mark those who saw and never returned? In Part 4, we'll go back to the battlefield, where something unspeakable occurred. A night of horror, where light became sound, sound became pain, and pain became silence. But before that, do you think Fletcher told the truth, or was it all a dying man's dream? Comment below. And if you're still with us, like this video, because the deeper we dig, the darker it gets. And the light might not be what you think it is. July 3rd, 1944, near the outskirts of Caumont-Levante. The war was dragging on, and the Allied forces were pushing hard into the hedgerow country of Normandy. Thick, tangled fields, tall grass, narrow paths, a nightmare for infantry. But what happened to Echo Company that night had nothing to do with the Germans. It began at 1:17 a.m. The weather was calm, clear skies, stars visible. Then, a blackout. Complete, not just lights. Radio silence, compasses frozen, watches stuck at the same time. And then, light. But not from the sky, from the ground. Private Jace Mulligan was the first to scream, not from pain, but from confusion. He said the earth beneath him glowed, soft blue pulses, rising like veins under skin, stretching across the entire field, like the ground itself was alive. Sergeant Willis ordered everyone to freeze. Then they heard it, a hum, so low it rattled their teeth. Then a crack, sharp, electric, and suddenly, a tree exploded. No fire, no bullet, just snapped in half like it had been crushed from the inside out. They dropped, scanned the field, but there was no one. Nothing. No muzzle flash. No sound of movement. Then something darted past. Not through the air, through their vision. A blur. A streak of silver and green. No shape, just motion. Corporal Heller started convulsing. His eyes rolled back. Blood trickled from his ears. They dragged him behind a hedgerow. He kept repeating the same words. "It sees me. It sees me. It sees me." The medic, Sam Ricci, tried to stabilize him, but then every compass in the group shattered, cracked down the center. The watches all clicked forward, exactly 27 minutes. But no one had moved. Time had. And then the fog rolled in, thick, dense, but cold. So cold their breath vanished, their sweat froze. And then came the sound. Footsteps. Marching. Hundreds of them. But no one could see who. The fog shimmered. Shapes moved inside it. Tall, lean silhouettes. Some wearing helmets, others with no heads at all. Mulligan whispered, "Are they ours?" Then a figure emerged. Not walking. Gliding. No face. No features. Just black. Outlined in pulsing blue light. It passed directly through a fallen tree, not around, through. Ricci screamed and opened fire. The bullets passed straight through. No reaction, no wound, nothing. And then the sound stopped. Not faded. Stopped. Instantly. No birds, no wind, no breathing, just stillness. The kind that presses against your skull, that kind of silence that feels alive. Willis gave the order. Retreat, regroup. But when they turned to run, half the men were gone. Not fallen, gone. No prints, no trail, just vanished. 6 soldiers, gone in a blink. The rest sprinted blindly into the trees. And that's when the sky lit up. Not lightning, not flares. Shapes, geometric, twisting, spinning above the trees. One looked like a spinning cube. Another a perfect ring of light. Then the triangle. Black, silent, massive, floating just overhead. Mulligan fell to his knees, sobbing. "It's not real! It's not real!" But it was. And it didn't move. It hovered, impossibly still. Then a beam. Not a light beam, not harsh. More like an invitation. It enveloped Heller's body, and he rose, without moving. Lifted, upward, screaming. Then quiet. Then gone. The beam blinked off, and the triangle vanished. No sound, no gust, just gone. They found only 3 soldiers from Echo Company the next morning, huddled beneath a collapsed barn, shell-shocked, mute. Ricci was one of them. He never spoke again, only wrote, over and over. They weren't here for us, we were here for them. The Army covered it up, said they were ambushed, called it psychological trauma under combat. But the battlefield told another story. Burned circles in the grass, tree bark twisted in spirals, and a body, half embedded in a rock. Not crushed, merged. No one could explain it, so they buried it. Literally, concrete over the field. But sometimes, locals say the trees there still glow at night, and the dogs won't go near it, and on very still nights, you can hear the humming, low, vibrating, almost like breathing. So the question is, what did Echo Company witness? An attack? A test? Or a warning? Something not meant to be seen? And why are these events always erased? Hidden? Even now, decades later, documents surrounding Echo Company's mission are sealed. Why? What's so dangerous about the truth? In Part 5, we dig even deeper. We'll hear from a soldier who says the answers lie in a memory he's buried for over 50 years. A memory that involves something ancient, and something not from here. But before that, have you ever heard of similar events? Let us know in the comments. If you're still watching, hit that like button. Because the things you're about to see, they're not just stories anymore. They're history. Unwritten. The memory came in fragments. At first, just flashes, mud, blood, a figure in the sky, then the hum, that low, endless hum. Sergeant Louis Mercer thought he had buried it, sealed it so deep that not even nightmares could pull it out. But 60 years later, it returned. Triggered by something simple, a smell, ozone and lavender. A storm rolled through his quiet farmhouse in Rouen. And in its wake came that scent, sharp, metallic, floral, and just like that, he was back there. July 1944. Operation Cobra, the push to break out of the Normandy hedgerows. Louis and his unit had been separated, cut off by mortar fire. 4 of them holed up in a stone crypt near a crumbled abbey outside St. Lo. Old, forgotten, a shelter, or so they thought. But the air inside didn't move. No breeze, no dust, just stillness. Mercer lit a match, and something above them flickered. A symbol, etched into the stone ceiling. Not French, not Latin, not anything they could identify. A triangle inside a circle. Again, this symbol kept showing up. In the dirt, on helmets, in dreams. But here, it glowed faintly, as if it recognized them. Private Benton reached out, just to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, every lantern, every flashlight, every match they had died. Darkness swallowed them. Then came the noise, not from outside, from below, a grinding, wet, like bones turning in clay. The ground vibrated, and then a burst of cold wind shot through the crypt. But there were no openings, no doors, just solid rock. The walls began to shimmer, ripple, and Mercer saw it, not with his eyes, with his memory. He was standing in a field, but not France, not Earth. The stars were wrong. A dull violet sky stretched above him, and in the distance, giant stone monoliths floated mid-air, rotating slowly. He wasn't alone. Figures surrounded him, humanoid, but elongated. No mouths, no eyes, just skin, glowing from within like the color of old embers. And then, he heard the voice. Not a sound, a message, inside his head. You are echoes, you are not the first. He tried to speak, to move, but he couldn't, just listened. Every war leaves a scar, but some scars bleed through time. Then darkness again, and he was back in the crypt. But Benton was gone. No scream, no drag marks, just dust where he stood. The rest of them fled. They didn't look back. But as they burst into the open, something loomed above them. Massive, silent, a floating shape. Not a ship, a structure, black, smooth, angular, like obsidian carved by thought. It hovered for just a moment, then split into 3 glowing orbs and shot into the clouds. Gone. That was the last time Mercer ever saw anything like it, until years later, when he saw the symbol again, on an ancient stone tablet from Mesopotamia, displayed in a London museum. Circle, triangle, circle, same formation, thousands of years apart. He asked the curator. The symbol had no known meaning. The culture was lost. But the tablet was buried at the site of a mass grave, a war, and nearby, reports of sky fire etched into the walls, drawings of lights descending from above, figures with glowing heads. It wasn't just Normandy. It wasn't just World War II. This, whatever it is, has happened before, again and again. Wars, bloodshed, and lights in the sky. And always, the same silence from the authorities. Mercer believes we're not the center of the story. We're part of someone else's. And Normandy wasn't just a battlefield. It was a beacon, a signal, the perfect storm of chaos, pain, and energy. Something came to witness it, record it, maybe even feed from it. And the crypt wasn't just a tomb. It was a door, one Mercer accidentally opened. So where does that leave us? Are these beings observers, scientists, or something worse, predators? The evidence is mounting. The symbols, the memories, the silence. Too many pieces scattered through time, all pointing to the same mystery. But maybe we're getting closer. Because in the next part, a forgotten audio log resurfaces, recorded by a field radio operator during the Battle of St. Lo, one that was hidden for decades. And what's on it changed everything. But until then, tell us what you think. Is Mercer's vision just trauma? Or did he see something ancient, something buried? Leave a comment, let us know. And if you've made it this far, like the video, because the story is far from over. Vaju jang cho joy o chong tiep theo. Chin la jong noi, St. Lo, July 16th, 1944. A town left in ruins, bombed into rubble. Streets turned to dust, trees uprooted like weeds. It was called the capital of ruins. But that's not the strangest part of the story, because buried in the debris was a tape, a reel-to-reel audio recording, unmarked, unlabeled, discovered by a reconstruction crew in 1952, hidden inside the steel shell of a melted communications outpost. It took years before anyone even played it. The static was unbearable at first. White noise, then clicks, like footsteps. Metallic, irregular, and then breathing. Ragged, uneven, shaky. Then a voice, male, young, terrified. If anyone finds this, we weren't alone out here. Pause. It started last night. Lights above the cathedral ruins. No sound, just light. And then, one of us started floating. What follows is silence. 27 seconds. And then the scream. Long, twisting, too distorted to be human. Like metal bending under pressure. Like pain without lungs. Then the voice returns. Quiet. Distant. He's gone. He floated up and just disappeared. No beam, no ship, just gone. Then we saw them. They don't walk. They glide. Black shapes, long arms, no eyes. I don't think they breathe. One of them looked at me. I couldn't move. My bones started vibrating, my mouth filled with blood. A pause. Heavy breathing. The tape crackles. They're not here to fight. They're not even here to watch. They're collecting. The audio cuts. No explosion. No gunshot. Just cuts. That recording was never released to the public. It was passed from archive to archive, labeled as unverified audio, and eventually locked in the classified vault at the Ministry of Defense in London. Until now. We heard it, anonymously submitted. One of the techs who handled the restoration kept a copy. And what we heard? Confirmed everything. Because that same night, July 16th, 3 separate platoons reported floating lights above the valley east of St. Lo. But the lights weren't lights. They were moving, not flying, shifting, bending in and out of the clouds. Sergeant Brunner from the 11th Infantry Division described it like stars that had learned to think. He wasn't being poetic. He was scared. One of the shapes, he said, descended silently behind a building. Seconds later, the building collapsed inward, not outward, inward, as if crushed from within, and standing at the center was a figure. Tall, human-shaped, but not human, too thin, too long, like something mimicking us, but wrong. The eyes, if there were any, they didn't shine. They absorbed light, pulled it in, left shadows where there should have been clarity. One man fired, and then he vanished. Not hit, not taken, vanished. Not a single trace left behind. No weapon, no gear, no prints in the mud, as if space had swallowed him. And then the ground shook, not from artillery, not from bombs, but from underneath. A vibration, like a heartbeat. Thump, 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 and then the fog. Always the fog. Thicker than before. Colored this time. Sickly green with blue pulses. They tried to retreat, but the fog didn't let them. It followed. Like a tide. It wrapped around the soldiers like tendrils, grasping, clawing, and inside it, whispers. Too many voices to count, some in German, some in French, some in languages no one recognized, and some too close, inside their heads. Corporal Evan Shaw collapsed, foaming at the mouth, repeating the same phrase in Latin. He didn't speak Latin, not even a word. The medic who stabilized him said his pupils were fully dilated, heart rate, normal, brain waves, erratic, as if he were asleep and wide awake at the same time. When he woke, he didn't remember the war, he didn't remember his name, but he remembered the symbol. He drew it again and again on his cot. Circle, triangle, circle, same as the others. And when he was discharged 6 months later, he left a journal. One entry. They've been here before. They come when blood touches soil, and we keep giving them reasons. So now the question is, what are they? Observers? Collectors? Or something far worse? And why Normandy? Why here? Why then? Could it be that war draws them in? Like moths to flame? Or maybe they start the fires themselves. In Part 7, the soldiers begin to ask questions. Theories form, but nothing can explain the next discovery. Physical proof, markings, evidence, traces left behind, signs that something was there, and it wasn't human. But before we go there, if this story has you looking over your shoulder, hit that like button. Leave a comment. Tell us, do you believe these beings are peaceful, or have we mistaken curiosity for something far more dangerous? The lights aren't gone. They're just waiting. And the fog? It always returns. It was supposed to be a cleanup op. July 19th, 1944. A recon team, Charlie Red, was dispatched to comb the ruins east of St. Lo. Their mission: recover abandoned gear, bury the dead, and chart safe passages for incoming units. But they didn't bring back bodies. They brought something else. Something no one could explain. At 4:12 a.m., Lieutenant Mason Clark radioed command. We've found something. It's not German, not ours. Looks like skin, but it's metal. The line went dead. When backup arrived 6 hours later, the area was empty. The fog had rolled in again. The soldiers were gone. But what they left behind was still there. Buried in the mud, half sunk like a broken bone, was an object. Oval, smooth, about the size of a human skull. It pulsed faintly, blue and red alternating, no seams, no markings. Yet when they touched it, every watch within 10 meters stopped. The medics who later examined it described the material as neither metal nor organic, lightweight, cold, and yet warm to the touch. It was turned over to intelligence, never seen again. But the incident spread, whispers through the ranks, stories traded in mess halls, myths formed faster than bullets. Some called it the egg, others the eye. But no one knew what it really was, only this: where that object was found, strange things began to happen. Compasses spun, birds avoided the sky, and the trees leaned inward, as if bowing, and then came the maps. Old military topographies, before the bombing, showed nothing unusual about the region. But after? New symbols appeared, coordinates with no explanation, marked in red ink with initials, ZAPI, 0 point. No one admitted what it meant, but a handful of soldiers started noticing a pattern. Every location marked ZP had one thing in common: an unexplainable event, a floating light, a vanishing soldier, a ripple in time. At least 7 of these coordinates overlapped with battlefields from past wars: Napoleonic, Roman, even ancient Gallic skirmishes. Same places, same phenomena, same symbol: circle, triangle, circle. It was like the earth remembered. Private Rowan discovered something else. An old book buried beneath a collapsed farmhouse. A local villager's diary from 1892, written in French. Faded, but readable. One entry: the soldiers came again last night, but not from this world. They hovered above the fields, glowing like the moon. They took the calf and left behind a stone with a mark, circle and blade. The blade, he believed, referred to the triangle, cutting through the circle, piercing something ancient. Rowan shared this with his captain. The next day he was reassigned. 2 days later, missing. No trace. His bunk was left untouched. Except one thing. A message scratched into the underside of his cot. 4 words. "They're here to harvest." And that word kept echoing through the rest of the unit. Harvest? But harvest what? Souls? Energy? Memories? One corporal swore he saw his dead brother walking through the fog, uniform tattered, face half melted, but eyes alive. He followed him. Never returned. Others began reporting dreams, recurring, of monoliths, floating pyramids, a sky that bled sideways, of music that wasn't sound, and voices that spoke in numbers. The medics diagnosed it as PTSD. But the dreams spread. Across units, across camps, men who'd never met described the same visions, same colors, same beings. They began calling them the observers, because they never interfered, never attacked directly. They just watched, until someone tried to explain it all. Captain Arnold Beckett, Oxford-educated, skeptical, grounded, until he wasn't. He pieced together fragments, letters, journal entries, missing time reports, and the ZP coordinates, and he formed a theory. He called it the reflection hypothesis. He believed the lights, the figures, the fog, they weren't visitors. They were echoes, reflections of trauma folded through space and time. War, he said, is a frequency, a violent vibration, and some things resonate with it, feed on it, are summoned by it. He wasn't sure if they were alive, or machines, or ghosts of another kind, but he was certain of one thing. They weren't new. They'd always been here. Waiting, his theory was dismissed. He was transferred. 3 days later, he vanished from his post, and from every document, as if he'd never served. But his journal remains, hidden in a private archive. One page simply reads, "If you see the symbol, leave. If it speaks to you, don't answer. If it follows, run. There is no reasoning, there is only remembering." So, is that all this is? A memory? Something ancient burned into the soil? Or something real that still walks beside us? In Part 8, the search begins. Soldiers decide to find answers. They go looking for the truth, into forbidden zones, into the fog, into the beating heart of the unknown. But what they find was never meant to be seen. Before we go there, tell us your theory. Are the ZP sites portals, markers, warnings? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like this video if you're starting to wonder, what if Normandy wasn't the only battlefield they touched? What if they're already here? And have been for a long, long time. They weren't supposed to go in. July 22nd, 1944. Two soldiers, Sergeant Paul Whitmore and Corporal Felix Harlan, made a choice. They crossed into a zone their commanding officers marked off-limits due to unexploded ordnance. But they didn't believe that. No one did. Not after what they'd seen. Whitmore had found a photograph the night before. Torn. Burnt. Around the edges. Slipped into the lining of a gas mask pouch belonging to a missing soldier from Echo Company. It showed a field, barren, fog-covered, but in the center stood a figure. Dark, blurred, humanoid, but not. 3 arms, too tall. The head, almost crystalline. And around it, symbols in the grass, formations burned into the earth, spiral patterns, perfectly circular. Whitmore recognized the terrain. He and Harlan left at first light. They took no radios, no maps, just a compass, a knife, and a question. What was this thing? And why was it always in the center of every disappearance? They reached the field by dusk. The fog was already there. It didn't roll in like weather. It was already waiting, standing still, like a wall of breath. Harlan stepped in first. The moment he crossed the grass line, the birds stopped singing. Whitmore followed. The air shifted. Denser. Every footstep made no sound. No crunch of twigs, no echo, like the earth itself had stopped listening. Inside the fog, things moved, not seen, just felt. Shapes in the peripheral, whispers, like memory playing backwards. Then, a light, not blinding, not aggressive, a pulse, from beneath the ground. They stepped closer and found an opening, perfectly round, like a well, but instead of water, it glowed. Pulsed, blue, red, then gold, and deeper than it should have been. Whitmore dropped a stone, no sound. He dropped another, same. Then, he leaned in and saw them, reflections, his own face, Harlan's and others. But the faces weren't moving with them, they were observing, as if recorded, frozen. Some were familiar. Others were people he swore he'd never met. But they all had one thing in common. The same symbol marked beneath their right eye. Circle, triangle, circle. Harlan whispered, "Paul, look up." And there it was, hovering above the fog. The triangle. Silent, massive, geometric, but not made of metal. It looked like thought, like dream. It shifted as it hovered, its edges bending subtly, as if wrapped in the fabric of something not yet discovered. And then it responded, not with sound, but with understanding. Suddenly Whitmore's nose bled, his ears rang, his heart skipped once, then twice. He dropped to a knee. Harlan screamed, grabbing him, and in that moment the fog thickened. They couldn't see the hole, couldn't see their hands, only a light pulsing beneath their feet. Then, nothing. They woke up hours later, lying beside the tree line. Their watches read 3:33 a.m., but they'd entered the fog just after dusk. They had no memory of the hours in between, only fragments, images, a hallway made of glass, a voice humming mathematics, a staircase that led in every direction, and eyes. everywhere, watching, not blinking, just absorbing. They tried to return, but the fog never appeared again, not there, not in that field, like it had moved on or moved them. But the changes didn't stop. Back at camp, their skin began to change. Tiny patterns, barely visible to the eye, formed just beneath the surface. Faint geometric shapes, only seen under certain light. And their blood, when tested by the medic, coagulated slower, reacted to metal. Their dreams returned too. This time, both men shared them. Identical images, floating cities, inverted oceans, a field of light filled with whispering children, none of them born on Earth. And in each dream, a countdown, always the same number, 7. No one knew what it meant, but something had been started, and the others felt it. More soldiers began reporting sleepwalking, objects levitated in tents. A boot was found fused into stone, and on the western wall of an abandoned farmhouse, new symbols appeared. No one painted them. They just were. Fresh, precise, circle, triangle, circle. The investigators called it psychological contagion, mass hysteria. But that didn't explain the radiation spike near the field. Didn't explain the compass that pointed straight up. Didn't explain the photo, taken days later by a recon plane, that showed a perfect triangle burned into the cornfield. 120 feet across, visible only from the sky. And then came the discovery. A journal, belonging to a German soldier stationed in the same region, months before D-Day. In it, he wrote of night demons, floating lights, and a being who spoke without breath. He too described the same dreams, the same countdown. This wasn't isolated, and it wasn't new. It was repeating, like a song, a pattern, a test, and those who tried to uncover it vanished. So Whitmore and Harlan made a pact to find more, to go deeper, not just into the battlefield, but into history, because the answer, they believed, wasn't above. It was below, buried, waiting. And in Part 9, they find it. Or rather, it finds them. And what they see next shakes even the strongest. But before we open that chapter, have you ever had a dream that felt like a memory? Something you never lived, but can't forget? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like the video if you believe. Some truths aren't hidden. They're just waiting for the right time to return. They weren't the same after the fog. Whitmore stopped sleeping. Harlan started speaking languages he didn't know. They said it was exhaustion, delirium, war stress. But then Harlan wrote something on the wall of his tent. Not consciously. He didn't even remember doing it. But there it was, etched with chalk in a language no one could read, except for one man. An archaeologist embedded with the Allied forces to assist with cultural preservation, Dr. Emery Voss. He stared at the markings, pale as a ghost. He said they resembled symbols found inside an ancient cave system in Turkey, one sealed for over 4,000 years. The same 3 shapes repeated: circle, triangle, circle. Voss had seen those shapes before, but never glowing, because now they were. Under black light, the chalk shimmered, pulsed, alive. That's when the army stepped in. Harlan was taken, flown out, no record. Whitmore disappeared 3 days later. But their belongings? Left behind. And inside Harlan's rucksack, tucked behind a torn field ration pack, was a stone. Smooth, black, cold, carved with one symbol, the triangle. But it wasn't just a carving. It went deeper, far deeper. Scans later showed it extended into the stone with impossible precision, micro-etchings going 10 layers deep. Technology no one understood. A week later, something returned. The fog, the light, the vibration, But this time it wasn't in the forest, it was in the air. July 29th, 1944, near Le Mesnil. A platoon was caught in a flash storm, lightning with no thunder, thunder with no clouds, and above them, 3 objects, rotating slowly, defying gravity, one shaped like a disc, one like a cube, and the last, unshaped. It pulsed like a wound. The men froze, not by choice. Their limbs wouldn't move. Their rifles grew cold, even in their hands. And then, the light. It wasn't a beam. It was a silence, falling from the sky, and with it came images, visions, not seen, given. Each soldier saw something different. One saw his own funeral. Another saw his mother, who had died 10 years before, smiling, then screaming. One screamed, "They're inside my blood!" And then, like that, gone. The lights vanished, but the silence stayed. For hours, the birds, the wind, even the buzzing of flies over the dead, gone. When sound returned, the ground shook once, a deep rumble, and from that moment on, everything changed. Dogs in the nearby village refused to leave their kennels. Clocks spun counterclockwise. And then, the river changed direction. No one could explain it, so no one tried. But something had been left behind. In the exact spot the lights appeared, a crater had formed, not from impact, but from absence. The grass was gone. The earth scooped away like a spoon from pudding. And in the center, a shape burned into the soil, circle, triangle, circle. Again. The pattern repeated everywhere the phenomena occurred. Every encounter, every disappearance, every death, a code, a warning, or a signature, and then they returned. But not the lights, the beings, humanoid. Too tall, clad in what looked like silver-black skin. But it wasn't skin, not armor either. It bent like silk, shimmered like water. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One soldier approached, arms out, trembling. He muttered, "Do you remember me?" No answer, and yet he dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes. Said he saw them once, in a dream, before the war. He'd never spoken of it, never told anyone. But he remembered now. And they remembered him. Another soldier fired. The bullet never landed. It simply disappeared. The air folded around it. Time bent. Witnesses say the shooter fell unconscious instantly. He never woke up. Doctors said brain aneurysm, but his brain had no damage, none. As if the soul had been removed. Cleanly, like unplugging a machine. So what were they? Beings, machines, or something stranger? Voss, the archaeologist, had one theory. He called them refractions. Not visitors, not ghosts, but reflections of something beyond comprehension. Entities we glimpse in moments of extreme trauma. When time thins, when reality frays, they don't arrive, they emerge, because they're already here. And when the war stirred the world into chaos, they surfaced. Some say they're here to watch, others say they're here to judge. But a few believe something worse, that we are their experiment. And every war, just another observation, another test. And when we pass, we move on, but when we fail, we vanish. In Part 10, we find out what happens when someone tries to leave. Because one soldier didn't just witness them, he followed them. And what he saw on the other side changes everything. But before we cross that line, do you believe these beings are reflections? Or the ones holding the mirror? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this shook you, like the video. Because the next step, it's not just a story anymore. It's the doorway, and it's open. August 1st, 1944, near Morton. The war was changing. The Germans were planning a desperate counteroffensive. The Allies were holding the line. The front was chaos. But beneath that chaos, another story unfolded. A story no one ever put in the reports. because Sergeant Michael Anders didn't return from his patrol that night. He reappeared. 2 days later, naked, covered in ash, silent. No wounds, no blood, but his boots were still tied, and the tag on his uniform still hanging around his neck. Yet there was one problem. The tag wasn't scratched or stained. It was new. Perfect. As if it had just been issued. Anders didn't speak for 24 hours. He just stared. Then, suddenly he asked, "What year is it?" They thought he was shell-shocked, confused, until he said something else. "There's a door, not one you open, one you fall into." No one understood what he meant, until he started drawing spirals, layers, geometric shapes looping inside each other. At first glance, it looked like nonsense, but Voss, the archaeologist, recognized something. A structure from an ancient Sumerian tablet, lost in a museum bombing years before. The diagram had no translation, just a single word in cuneiform beneath it, Ashurun. Roughly translated, the path that devours. And Anders? He drew it from memory, with perfect symmetry. He told Voss everything that night. He didn't go missing. He didn't hide. He followed them, into the fog. He said the light came from below, that it wasn't light. It was time, collapsing, folding in on itself. He didn't walk through it. He was pulled. And on the other side, there were no landscapes, no sky, only thought. A place made of emotion, terror, grief, echoes of screams never uttered. He said the beings weren't beings. They were reflections of intention, shaped by the war, by us. They fed on trauma, not in a predatory way, but like roots feed on water. And in that place, time didn't flow. It waited. He saw soldiers from the Great War, still alive, still marching, but their eyes, blank. Like memory wiped clean, one spoke to him, or tried to. Its mouth didn't move. But Anders understood. You don't escape, you dissolve. He begged to leave, and something allowed it. Just like that. No warning, one blink, and he was back. But the world had moved, and so had he, because Anders wasn't human anymore, not entirely. His vitals were off, heart rate too low, temperature too cold, blood type unreadable. And when they x-rayed him, they found something else, a shape beneath his skin, in the chest, not metal, not bone, a geometric object, resting near his heart. It didn't move, it didn't pulse. But every time someone entered the room, it reoriented, like a compass, pointing to each person, as if reading them. And when the doctors tried to remove it, the tools broke, every single one, without touching the skin. Then Anders vanished from a sealed tent, under guard, no exit, no blood, no prints, just a smear of black ash. And in the center, 3 lines burned into the dirt, circle, triangle, circle. So what happened to him? Did he escape, or was he reclaimed? Because if these beings control time, then escape might not mean what we think it does. And control might never have been ours to begin with. That's the turning point. Because from here on, nothing stays stable. The air, the sound, the light, all begins to warp. Reality begins to bend. And those who know the truth start to disappear, one by one. In part 11, someone brings proof. Not a theory, not a memory, evidence, undeniable, unexplainable, and what it reveals might be too much for anyone to carry. But before that, do you believe Anders? Could you walk into something like that and come back? Would you? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this shook you, if it's making you question the fabric around you, like this video. Because we haven't reached the edge yet. We're just stepping onto it. And beyond that edge, there's something watching, something waiting. He arrived without a name, just a brown envelope, sealed, marked with 2 letters, VP, no rank, no file, no badge, just a voice, tired, low, certain. He said he had one thing to share. Then he'd disappear. And he did. But what he left behind shattered everything. The envelope held 3 items: a black and white photo, aged, grainy, but real; a battlefield, but not Normandy; China, 1937. A line of soldiers marching through mist. Above them, 3 lights, perfectly aligned. But one detail stood out. The same symbol on the shoulder patch of a dead soldier. Circle, triangle, circle. A worn field map. Normandy, July 1944. Not the official version. This one had red markings. Dozens, each labeled T-3 contact. The key at the bottom decoded the label. Temporal event, level 3, meaning uncontained anomaly. And finally, a tape. Magnetic reel, 8 millimeters, labeled Opus, black reed, witness recording. We restored it, and what we heard still echoes. It begins with heavy breathing, boots crunching wet ground. The speaker is Corporal Dana Fry. She's whispering, nervous. We're near Grid Point Echo 4. The air feels wrong, like it's inside me. Another voice, Lieutenant Cam Harrington. Copy that. Hold formation. We're only here for the object. Then, silence for 40 seconds, until the hum begins. That low, bone-deep vibration. You feel it in the teeth before the ears. Fry gasps. Sir, something's in the fog. Tall, no eyes. It's watching. Then a sound. Not human. A wet click. Like metal breathing. Oh God! It's moving through the trees, not around them. Through. Then screams. Harrington shouts. Gunfire. Static. Then a voice. Not Fry, not Harrington. Something else. Something within the machine. Not in English, not in any language. Just rhythm. Tone. Feeling. And yet every person who's heard the tape says they understood the same message. You are trespassing inside memory. Then the tape fractures, rewinds itself, fast, abrupt, back to the beginning, then stops, then plays something new. The same voices, but not the same recording. This time, Fry says, something else. I remember this. This already happened. And Harrington, his voice is distant, like he's miles away. We never left. We just forgot. End of recording. This was Opus, Black Reed, a black operation meant to recover a downed object. But the team never found wreckage. Because it wasn't a crash, it was a doorway, and they stepped through. What came back? Wasn't all them, because here's what VP included as a final note. Typed, single sentence. You can't understand it because you are it. The war was never just ours. He vanished that night. But the evidence? Too much to dismiss. The lights, the echoes, the lost time, the patterns. You think Normandy was an isolated case? It wasn't. The same coordinates, same fog, same symbols, appear in Vietnam, in Iraq, in the Falklands, even back to Gallipoli. Different wars, same lights, same beings, same message. They're not invading, they're cataloging. Some believe it's preparation, others think it's judgment. But there's a third theory, the most terrifying, that they're not outsiders at all, that they are us, evolved, returned, trying to warn themselves, through time, through trauma, through reflection. And war is the only mirror strong enough to see them. So ask yourself, what's worse, that they're watching? Or that they remember us better than we remember ourselves? In part 12, we go back. Because the phenomena, they start again. The fog returns, the lights descend. And this time, they're not just watching, they're choosing. But before we cross that line, what do you believe the tape was? A warning? A trap? Or a glimpse into something we were never meant to survive? Let us know below. And if this part made you feel it, really feel it, hit that like button. because the war might have ended in history. But something else is still playing out, somewhere beneath it all, waiting, watching, echoing. August 5th, 1944. They thought it was over, that whatever it was, the lights, the fog, the disappearances, it had passed, the front had shifted, towns were liberated, the sound of artillery faded into the distance, but then it came back, not with thunder, with silence. The soldiers stationed near Domfront reported it first, a field of cattle, frozen mid-stride, not dead, just paused, like reality hit pause. Their bodies trembled, but their eyes stared blankly, unblinking, as if trapped in a moment, and the sky, wrong, no clouds, no wind, just a dim hue, like light filtered through stained glass. And the birds? Gone. Completely. One soldier wrote in his journal, "It was like the world inhaled and never exhaled." Then came the sounds, subtle at first, metal tapping metal, like someone dragging nails across a submarine hull. Then, voices, faint, familiar, calling from the edges of the trees. A medic named Brenner heard his father's voice, his father who had died in 1929. "Come home, son," it said. "It's over now." He dropped his kit, walked into the woods, never came back. No trail, just a perfect circle burned into the forest floor, and at its center, 3 pebbles arranged like a triangle. Later that evening, 5 different units reported equipment malfunctions. Watches reversed. Ink ran up the page. Radio signals bounced back 5 seconds after transmission, like they were echoing before being spoken. And then, the lights returned. Not in the sky, in the soil. Blue veins of glowing light ran across the ground like roots beneath the battlefield. Anyone who touched them screamed, not from pain, from knowing. One soldier fell to his knees and began naming every man who died in his unit, in order, dates, places, details, names no one had told him, but all confirmed. And then he said one more name, not from his unit, not from that war. Alexei Borodin, Tsarist Battalion, 1916, Verdun. No one knew who that was, until Voss found the name in a Russian military archive. Exact match. Same year, same rank, same place. What does it mean? That's what terrified them, because it wasn't just the lights anymore. It was memory, coming back, bleeding through. The fog rolled in again on August 6th, but this time it spread wider. Civilians saw it too. Farmers reported their tools rising off the walls. One man claimed the dead rose from the local cemetery, not as ghosts, as echoes. They didn't speak, they didn't move, they just stood in the fog, watching. And then, they faded. Not disappeared. Faded. Like mist swallowed by deeper mist. The local priest hung himself the next morning. His note read, "I've seen the eyes. They are not from heaven, but they are older than it." And across the countryside, more began to vanish. Not soldiers, the listeners, the ones who had heard the hum, the ones who had seen the symbol in their dreams. They were being pulled back, reclaimed, one by one. And those who remained, they weren't untouched. They began to change. One man bled silver. Another saw numbers scrolling across his vision when he closed his eyes. One drew maps of places that didn't exist. Yet, when compared to satellite imagery decades later, the formations did appear. Exact. But impossible, because he drew them in 1944, before satellites, before the terrain was even mapped. It wasn't prophecy, it was memory of a future already seen, already lived, already looped. So is this what happens? The beings return when war tears the sky open, when time loses its shape? Do they come to warn us, to harvest us, to remember us? Or are we just echoes in their machine? Data, repeating, like a song with no final verse. In Part 13, we face them, because the soldiers don't run anymore. They search, and in their search, they find the source, the heart of it all, the center of the storm, and it's not what anyone expected. But before that, have you felt it? A pattern? A presence in your life you can't name? A whisper in moments of silence? Tell us in the comments. And if this chapter left your skin crawling, like the video, because we're almost there now. And what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about war, time, and what watches us from within it. August 9th, 1944. Near the forest of Cerisy-la-Forêt. What the survivors later called the still place. Nothing moved there. Not the trees, not the air, not even time. It was Voss who pushed them to go. After everything, the lights, the disappearances, the dreams, he was convinced there was a center, a source, a place where it all began, or bled through. 6 soldiers followed him. Only 2 returned. And they didn't speak for years. But eventually, one of them did. Staff Sergeant Nathan Cole, interviewed in 1982 by a journalist for a small paranormal publication. The tape was buried. Until now. This is what he said. It wasn't a battlefield. It was a wound, torn open and left to rot. He described the forest as unnatural. The trees, tall, ancient, but wrong, bent away from the center, as if rejecting something buried deep. Birdsong ceased 100 meters in. The closer they got, the heavier the silence became. Each footstep felt like it echoed forever. And at the very heart, a clearing, dead center. And in that clearing, the structure, not a building, not a ruin. It was alive. Stone, yes, but not cut. It looked grown. A black obelisk, 10 feet tall, made of a material that absorbed light, reflected nothing. It pulsed, not visibly, but you felt it in your teeth. And on one face, carved so deep the stone wept. Circle, triangle, circle, of course, but below the symbol, more markings, more than they'd ever seen. And Voss, his hands trembling, spoke a single word. A warning. Then came the hum, that low, bone-rattling hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. The sky dimmed, though it was midday, and then the lights, not above, within, from inside the obelisk. Blue veins lit up, spread across the stone like nerves, pulsing, syncing with their heartbeats. One soldier, Simmons, stepped forward. He touched the stone and froze. Completely. Not unconscious. Just stopped, mid-breath, eyes open, motionless. Voss screamed not to touch him. "He's still here," he said, "but not here." Then the air folded. Not wind, a crease in space, and from it they emerged, tall, silent, fluid, more than humanoid, less than human. They didn't walk. They floated, barely above the ground. One moved toward Cole. He tried to raise his weapon. His hands didn't move. And then he saw himself, not a reflection, not a mirror, but him, older, scared, crying, and beside that version of him, his brother, who had died in a minefield a year earlier, alive, laughing, and then the images flooded in, not shown, given. Burning cities, future wars, a world suffocating in silence, and then nothing. Just a single phrase. "You are the echo of your own mistakes." And Cole fell backward. The obelisk dimmed. The figures turned, vanished into the crease, and the light, gone. As if it never was. Simmons, still frozen, until his body collapsed, dust pouring from his mouth. His blood wasn't red anymore. It shimmered. Metallic. Cole and one other soldier carried Voss, sobbing, half-mad, back through the trees. Behind them, the clearing vanished. Not faded. Vanished. Like it had never existed. When they reached base, they were quarantined, debriefed, lied about. The official report read, "Friendly fire accident." Delusional stress episode, 1 fatality, 2 non-responsive. But the stone? Still out there. Somewhere. Because 2 months later, November 1944, an entire town near Metz reported seeing a second obelisk. It lasted 3 days, and then gone, just like the first. So what are they? Beacons, receivers, or warnings? Are these obelisks ours, from the future? Are they messages to stop something we haven't done yet? Or are they tests, placed here to measure us, to study us, to sort us? Because if they know our future, they're not just visitors, they're custodians, and we might be failing. In Part 14, we uncover the last clue, the final message, and a truth so vast, it rewrites everything we thought about the war, about time, and about what it means to be remembered. But before we face that, ask yourself this: if you saw a door in the woods, pulsing with light, humming your name, would you walk through it? Or would you run? Tell us in the comments. And if you're still breathing, still thinking, like this video. Because the truth is coming. And it's not what you think. It's worse. There was one more file. One more whisper buried under decades of red tape, sealed inside a military archive labeled only Project Sentinel. Not many knew it existed. Even fewer survived to speak of it. But in 1976, an anonymous letter was sent to a retired French intelligence officer. No return address. Inside, 3 pages. Typed, single-spaced, signed only, "He who endured." What it contained was a memory and a message. It wasn't about invasion. It was never about aliens or sightings. It was about continuity. He was a radio technician at a bunker near Coutances in late August 1944. The front had moved east. The area was quiet, too quiet. He stayed behind with 2 others to dismantle communications hardware. Nothing unusual until the signal came at exactly 2:44 a.m., a burst transmission, not from enemy frequencies, not from Earth. The signal was a pulse, not sound. Code. They played it through an oscilloscope, and it formed a shape, a perfect triangle, spinning, overlapping, reversing. Then it formed a symbol, the symbol, circle, triangle, circle. But then something happened. The technician stared at it for too long. And he began to speak, not in French, not in any language known to the others. He was reciting coordinates, not of a place, of a time. December 18th, 2074. And a name, The Last War. They wrote it down. Hours later, he went blind. His pupils dissolved. And when they checked the bunker logs, the oscilloscope had recorded nothing. No triangle, no signal, no trace, but the memory remained. And the message? Clear. Whatever these beings are, they don't travel through space. They travel through us, through memory, through trauma. They seed moments in history like markers, reference points, nodes, to track us, to track themselves. And Normandy? It wasn't chosen, it was activated. Too much death, too much fear, too much memory concentrated in one place, a beacon, a flare shot across time, a call home. Because here's the final theory, the one that chilled every researcher to their bones. We're not the first civilization, not the first to build, to fight, to destroy. We're the rebound, the consequence of something long forgotten trying to remember itself. And every war, every moment of unbearable pain, a mirror. Because when enough human souls scream at once, something answers, and that something remembers everything we've tried to forget. The lights, the obelisks, the visions, the missing, they're not visitors, they're reminders. Sent to warn us that time doesn't move forward, it loops, and we're already caught inside it. The Normandy incidents, just one note in a longer song, a requiem for a species playing a melody it doesn't even hear. Yet. But some of us do. The listeners, the ones who hear the hum when the world goes quiet. The ones who dream of places they've never seen but wake up crying. Not because of fear, because of recognition. This isn't just about World War II anymore. It's about what came before, and what might come again. And the symbol? It's not just a marking. It's an invitation. To look deeper. To remember. In Part 15, we end where it began, with a final warning, and the question no one wants to ask, if these echoes are memories. Whose memory are we? But before we face that, take a moment. Breathe. Look around. Do things feel familiar? Like you've lived this moment before? You probably have. Because time doesn't care about your calendar. It cares about your attention. And if you're still watching, they know you're listening. They always have. Like this video. And get ready. Because the ending? It's not the end. It's the return. The war ended. History moved on. Normandy was rebuilt. The blood scrubbed clean. The fog forgotten. But the memory? It never left. Because some stories don't end. They just stop being told. Until they force themselves back into the world, like a shadow that refuses to fall in line. And now, after everything, after 14 chapters of whispers, disappearances, lights in the sky, and truths too heavy to carry, this is the only thing we can say for certain. Something came to Normandy, and it wasn't human. It wasn't foreign. It was something familiar, old, reflective, something that saw us through a lens we don't even know exists. And when the veil between reality and memory thinned, they didn't come to conquer. They came to record, to witness, to judge, and maybe to reclaim. The final piece of evidence came in 2023 from an old farmhouse attic near Caen. A rusted ammunition box, sealed with wax. Inside, a journal, leather-bound. Pages brittle but intact. It belonged to Staff Sergeant Nathan Cole, the same man who survived the obelisk, the same man who vanished months later and was declared dead. The journal, however, proves he wasn't. Because the last entry was dated November 3rd, 1971, and it reads, "They let me live because I remembered, because I endured. But I've seen what comes next. I've seen the sky turn black not from fire, but from forgetting. When enough people forget what they were, they return. Not to punish, to harvest, memories, identity, time itself." He wrote of dreams, of entire cities melting into geometry, of birds flying backward, of a voice whispering only one sentence, again and again. "You were always ours." Cole never published the journal, never spoke to the press, but he marked one final line on the last page, just 5 words, burned into the paper with shaking hands. "The circle never breaks, ever." So what do we do with this? With the fog, the lights, the beings, with the stories of war haunted not just by death, but by something deeper, something cosmic? We remember, we document, and we warn. Because this wasn't just Normandy. This is Verdun, Gallipoli, Stalingrad, the Somme. It's anywhere blood soaks the soil faster than truth, anywhere the world rips open just wide enough for them to slip through. They are not a threat to armies. They are a threat to forgetting, to silence, to sleepwalking through time. And here's the warning. If you see the lights, don't look up. Look within, because they're not out there. They're in us, waiting for the next war, the next scar, the next echo. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you watched from beginning to end, you now carry the memory. You've felt the hum, seen the shapes, heard the whispers, and now they know you exist too. So protect your mind, guard your dreams, and if you ever see the symbol, circle, triangle, circle, don't touch it, walk away. And if you can't, leave a mark, write it down, tell someone, because even if they don't believe you, they might remember. And memory might be the only thing that saves us. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or opened a door in your thoughts you didn't know existed, like, comment, subscribe, and whatever you do, don't forget, because something out there never forgets you.